What's going on, YouTube? This is part 2 of the video series, purchasing a higher mileage vehicle or getting high mileage out of your engine. So after part 1, we're going to in this one, we're going to go over stuff that you can kind of look at quickly, things that you need to watch for. And one of the biggest things that I would recommend is have some kind of a notebook or a piece of paper on a clipboard and write down everything that you find as you go, and then know some of the average costs of what it's going to take to, one, perform repairs that are more than likely going to be required with any used vehicle purchase, because every used vehicle is going to have something worn out somewhere. Some of them are going to be in better condition, some are going to be worse. The very first thing you should do is actually drive it. Buzz it around the block, see how it shifts, get it up to speed. Make sure you do at least 60, 70 mile an hour and thing if you can in your area. And see how it handles, see how the transmission is shifting. Is it nice and smooth, or is it slam into gear, or do the RPMs just kind of, shoot to the roof and then it finally slams into gear and goes? Like, the test drive is going to tell you the absolute most. It's, tire noise, engine noises, vibrations. That's going to be what the biggest indicator of the condition of the vehicle is, the test drive. So knowing to drive it, also, putting miles on it if they have tried to clear codes or anything, will help, because if that check engine light comes on a test drive, you know that they're trying to hide something. And a lot of times if that kind of stuff happens to me, I will be a lot more cautious purchasing that vehicle, because I already know that the seller is hiding or withholding a lot of information. And information is absolutely critical when purchasing a used vehicle. So if you get to a seller and they're being really shady about it, they don't want to tell you anything about, oh, this is my truck, either buy it or don't, and they won't give you any information on it, it's a good indication you might need to walk away. Simply because they're trying to pull one over on you, and they're not going to take a lesser price than what they think it's worth, even though it needs thousands of dollars in repairs. They still want full blue book value for it. So once you've got that test drive done, pop the hood, start checking your fluid level, see how the engine oil looks, see how the inside of the engine looks, like we showed on the last one. Check the condition of the trans fluid, condition of the brake fluid. That will tell you if they're maintaining the vehicle. The age and state of the battery, that's a big one. So you'll notice this is the date code on this is 1 of 21, so January of 2021. This is a year and a half old now. We're in August of 22, so that's a year and a half old. Realistically, 3 to 5 years is all you're ever going to get out of the battery. And if you see a name brand like Never Start, you're going to be lucky to get about 2 out of that. Lower quality batteries. Interstate's going to be your best, but and that's just what I found over the years, is Interstate seems to be pretty good, but 3 to 5 years is all you're going to get out of a battery. So, if it has an older date code, it's 2 or 3 years old, write it down. Hey, this thing's going to need a battery before too long. The condition of the trans fluid, and condition of the coolant, condition of the brake fluid. Hey, it's going to need a flush. Average cost of an oil change, $50 to $100. Trans service, anywhere from 190, 150, all the way up to $300-$500, depending on the vehicle that it's in, and the cost of fluid and the cost to do the service. If it's a BMW or a Mercedes, they're going to clean you out to service that transmission. Condition of the serpentine belt, and write everything down. And one that will kind of help kind of reduce the confidence of the seller in the vehicle that they're selling, if you're sitting there marking and writing down everything that's going to need immediate maintenance or future maintenance. Condition of the tires, this is a big one that often gets overlooked, is they'll come and individuals, they'll look at the tire and say, hey, there's still plenty of tread on there, like that's just fine, hey, like there's no issues with that. Well, actually there are some pretty significant issues with this tire. It's a good brand. This is a hand-cooked tire. Okay, yes, there are still treads on here, but you'll notice that we are starting to get fairly low here. We might have, 5, 6, 30 seconds here in the middle, which is fine, but out here towards the edges, we're getting pretty low out here, and we are exhibiting a feathering and a cupping condition. So this is very easy to determine. All you have to do is take your hand across the tire side to side, and what you're feeling for is uneven. Now, this is obviously an odd tread pattern, but as you turn your hand this way, or as you slide your hand back, you'll feel that it catches. And then as you come forward, it feels as if you come across the tread and then it drops. This is a feathering condition. This means that there are alignment angles that are out. This vehicle needs an alignment, write it down. At a minimum, it needs at least a $100 alignment, plus whatever suspension components are worn out in the process, which, if you've already been on the test drive, you know if there's any clunks or any loose play in the steering, and that will need to be addressed before a proper alignment can be performed. But just looking at this one tire, an individual might say, hey, this thing's still got tire. I ain't got to worry about tires on this, when there's a lot more that needs to be checked. So one, we have a feathering condition, we have a cupping condition. We know that the shock absorbers have been worn out, which these actually just got replaced about 2 nights ago with brand new AC Delcos. The other thing to watch for is cracks in the sidewall, which we will notice, if I can get this camera to focus, there are very, very minor ones, but that's nothing really to be worried about. The ones you want to be worried about are the ones you can actually sink your fingernail deep into. There's also a date code on tires that you need to pay attention to, which this one actually does not have a date code on the outside, which is common. Sometimes when the tire gets mounted up, it will actually get mounted on the inside, not a big deal. But we need to check the age of the tire. So we'll notice here that this is a Hankook Dynapro ATM. We're going to go back to another tire and we're going to check this one. Hey, look, we still got treads up here. Everything looks fine. Same thing. Oh, this doesn't need tires. When in all reality, this is a Wild Country Trail 4SX. This is not a Hankook Dynapro. So we know that we already have mismatched tires on this, which is not good because this is a 4-wheel drive. This one is actually specifically an all-wheel drive, which does even worse. Because regardless, even though the tire size is the same, the actual height of these tires is going to differ. And I've actually got a paper over here I'll show you where I actually wrote down the actual overall tire size, measured it between all these different tires because they all have different tread. Now, this one, you might say, hey, this has still got tread, you know, everything's still good. Actually, there is no tread left on that. This tire is bald right here in the middle, completely bald. Out towards the edge, we have a little bit, which what this tells me is that this tire has been consistently run low, meaning that it probably has a leak. Or sorry, this one has been run overinflated because the tread's gone in the middle and still present on the outside. This was probably filled up brand new, 40 or 50 PSI, and then run that way for way too long. And so it has actually exponentially worn the outside. So that tire's junk. That one has cupping wear, which an alignment should correct, but we already have 2 mismatched tires on an all-wheel drive system, which when an all-wheel drive vehicle needs 1 tire, it needs all 4. So we're going to come back here to another tire. This one is a big O AT. Okay, so that's 3 mismatched tires on this vehicle. A lot better tread on this one, where this one actually, if I can get this camera to focus, has a lot more depth. This, if you just looked at this one tire, you'd say, hey, this truck is A-okay, good to go, good rubber on it. No, it is not. So 3 mismatched tires. We'll see if we can find a date code on this one, which this one, same thing, date code's on the inside, but not a big deal. There's no significant weather cracks on the sidewall. I'm not too concerned about that, because as they age, they will start to show up even worse. So we're now going to come to the last tire up here. What is this one? This is a trail cutter. A trail cutter. So we actually have 4 mismatched tires on one vehicle. Now, even though these are all 265/70/16s, every one of these tires is a different size. So with this vehicle, write it down. You need $1,200 immediately in tires to prevent any more damage than what they've already caused to the front and rear differential, as well as the transfer case. It causes damage, and I'll explain why. So let's see if we can find a date code on this one. We cannot. How did all 4 of these end up on the inside? But basically what you're looking for is there will be a little bubble about like this that's going to have 4 numbers on it. And it's the last 4 that you want to pay attention to. But that will be the week, the first 2 numbers, and the last 2 will be the year that the tire was manufactured. So anything over 5 to 7 years old is considered to be at the end of its shelf life. So we're actually over here on the wife's Infinity. But this date code, oh geez, that's not good. So this is actually more than likely not the right date code. which is one thing to be aware of. This is a 2013, and that says it's a 2012, which it is not. We'll check another one of these tires and try to get the actual date code here. No, these might be that old. Wow, because this one is the same thing. So this is our DOT number. It's the last four, so this is 03 of 2012. So it is 2022 now. These tires are 10 years old. These are at the end of their shelf life, meaning tires, after about 5 to 7 years, they begin to degrade to the point where they actually become dangerous and they can actually explode on you. You'll see this a lot on motorhomes because they don't get a lot of miles on them, but time still ticks by. And so the tires will actually rot and become dangerous before the tread's even close to being worn off. So this one actually still has a decent amount of tread. Might get another winter, maybe 2 out of these, so long as I can get the wife to maybe quit curbing these things. I might be able to get some years out of those still, but be aware that those tires are 10 years old. They need to be changed out. Like, they're due to be replaced. So back to the whole tires being different sizes on an all-wheel drive. I'm sorry, I'm kind of jumping around all over the place here. And the shop is an absolute mess. But, and again, I apologize for my handwriting. You've seen it in the last video. But we're actually going to go over this real quick. So these 4 different squares are the tires. And what I want you to pay attention to is this, the tire. So this is left front, left rear, right rear. Now this is a measurement from the ground, right in the center of the tire, all the way to the top. And this is measured in centimeters. So the left front is 73.4 centimeters. The right front is 74.8 centimeters. 73.8, 73.9. Now these 2 rears are actually pretty close. So the rear differential isn't going to see much play. But what goes on is that you have drive shafts connecting the 2 front tires on an all-wheel drive. You then have another drive shaft that goes from the differential back up to the transfer case. Well, when you're driving down the road with a 73.4 and a 74.8, that is a difference of 1.4 centimeters, which doesn't sound like a whole lot until you look and see that a centimeter is actually about the width of my finger. Is about a centimeter, or about the width of that box right there. So I guess about the width of my fingernail is a centimeter's difference. Well, as those tires go around, this one in about a mile is going to have a couple thousand revolutions, where this one is a bigger tire, it's going to have less revolutions. And so what actually takes up the difference in revolutions is the differential. Now, it is designed to do that, but only for corners. It's not meant to do it all the time. So any time that this Suburban is driving down the road, there is a difference of 1.5 centimeters on the front, which means that front differential is going to begin to start making noise, and it's going to significantly shorten the life of that differential. The sooner you can get tires under this, the better off you're going to be. And to be honest, just seeing the condition of the 4 different tires on an all-wheel drive like this, I know that this thing has not had the best maintenance done to it. And if this were not a Chevy truck, something that I could repair very cheaply, and it were more of something like this Infiniti, I would not have bought it. I would have walked away, especially for the price of that one. I paid $13,000 for that. If this had mismatched tires, you walk away and you do it immediately. It's not worth it because you're going to end up spending a lot of money to replace differentials, transfer cases, drive shaft. Like it wreaks havoc on these all-wheel drive systems. So, and then front to rear, there's not much. We're only about a 0.5 centimeter difference and a whole centimeter difference here and here, which means that the differentiating speed that's going on up here is also going to transfer to the transfer case in the rear, which isn't going to see very much, a 0.1 of a centimeter, which is for those of you that understand how the metric measuring system works, that's only 1 millimeter difference on the rear. There's not going to be any rear differential problems. But the transfer case and the front differential, they're going to get wiped out in this particular condition. So, again, I apologize for the handwriting. I also had, these are also the tire arch or the wheel arch heights. I was trying to level the suspension, ended up putting some adjustable air shocks on the back because of the amount of, or the exceptional amount of weight that I have on the Suburban with all of my tools that are inside of it. In fact, I'll give you a quick show and tell. Hey, look at that. We left the door unlocked. ratcheting wrenches. Every one of these wooden boxes that you see in here, and I'll show you, are just packed full. Now these are only 1/4 inch, but just packed full of heavy steel sockets. Tons of pliers, screwdrivers, air compressor, big floor jack, tons and tons and tons of weight in this thing. That was one of my customers drove by. But tires, always check them. Make sure that they're at least somewhat matching. If it's just a front wheel drive, so long as you've got 2 good tires on the front that have similar tread depth, you're going to be in a lot better place. Anything that's all-wheel drive, all 4 have to match and need to have similar tread patterns. Now, when you're measuring tread depth, you don't necessarily have to have a tread depth gauge. You know, they're only going to run you about $4 or $5. You can buy them at AutoZone. You can buy them at O'Reilly. You can buy them at Harbor Freight. All that you actually really need to do is take any coin, and it doesn't matter which one, okay? Now they say use a penny, a Lincoln head penny, that'll tell you if you got 30 seconds left. We don't care about that. All we care about is that we have similar tread depth. So we're gonna take the tread, we're gonna stick his head down in there. You can see it's about to the top of Washington's head on a 1/4, okay? And I'm gonna mark that with my thumbnail, okay? You're gonna keep it at the exact same orientation here. We're gonna go to the next tire, we're gonna stick it in the tread, and you're gonna notice that, hey, we've got a significant difference because there's no tread on this tire, okay? That is a problem. We're gonna go to the next tire, okay? And we are going to measure this one, and we are going to stick this down in the deepest part of the tread, and you'll notice that we are about back to Washington's head there. And we're going to mark it, and we're actually going to see that, hey, we're actually up on Washington's head, sorry, even further. We're going to go to the last tire, and we're going to do it again. And now you can really start to see the difference in tread. Because the first tire was about here, the second tire was no tread, and the last tire was about there, and now in this front tire, we are at almost about 0 tread. So these are going to cost you money, especially being that this particular Suburban was the all-wheel drive unit. That is a very, very bad sign, something to watch for, something to consider. You may consider walking away from the vehicle depending on the price. If you are at a dealership and you are buying a more expensive vehicle, I would say anything over about $6,000 to $10,000, I would walk away seeing just that. Because, you know, the dealership has had the opportunity to make repairs and to make this vehicle good. They have opted against fixing the tires, the mismatched tires, and the uneven tread from tire to tire. You know that they're just trying to get rid of that as cheaply as possible, and they're leaving you with the repair bill. They're not helping. A lot of times I would walk away just after seeing that. Nope, I'll go look at another vehicle if they have it on the lot. But honestly, I've already got a bad taste in my mouth, either from the seller, the used car lot, or the dealership, whoever it may be. I've got a bad taste in my mouth. Whereas if when I came to buy this one, these are actually the original tires that were on it when I bought it. Every bit of the tread, I measured each one with a tread depth gauge. I also had the ability to put it on a hoist and get a much more in-depth look. But just same thing again, just taking my hand across it, okay? Nice and smooth one way and pretty smooth back the other way. No cupping, none of these treads are lower than the others. Which means there's no cupping wear. The inside, same thing, nice and smooth going across. No egregious wear on these things. Actually getting down and looking at the front of the tire, if I can get the camera to focus, you can see that these are wearing nice, flat, even, and beautiful. And so, you know, I see something like that, and that tells me, hey, this thing's been at least somewhat better taken care of. It may not have ever had the misfortune of ever having a tire blowout, but I know that the alignments have been performed. When it has been bumped out of alignment or it's been curbed, I know that it's been done. I know that they've kept up on the maintenance on this vehicle. And then also, you know, doing my other checks, checking the inside of the valve cover, which on these VQs is difficult to look down inside. There was no significant sludge, no significant carbon picked it up, no significant oil leaks, and everything was in really good shape. And so I had no problem paying full Blue Book value for that vehicle. We paid $13,000 for it. I mentioned in the last one because of all this, I'll call it tyranny. This is viral tyranny. We're not getting parts the way that we should. And so the cost of vehicles has exponentially gone up, where this thing is now worth, Blue Book, it's worth $18,000. It's come up in the last 3 years that I've owned this. I paid $13,000. It's now worth $18,000. That never happens in the industry. Ever. You buy a vehicle, it immediately loses value. You put 100 miles on it, it's lost more value. You put 50,000 miles on it, the value is less than half of what you paid for it. So it's kind of a weird time right now, and that's why I'm making this video, so that you can make a little bit better informed decisions when you go to purchase a vehicle. There will be a couple more parts. I didn't mean to make a 20-minute video just on tires, suspension components, but that is one of those critical components that you need to look for, because especially on something like this, truck tires, you're anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 to put a new set of tires on that. Something like this Infiniti, similar priced, anywhere from $700 to $1,500 to put tires on this, because these are R19s. That is a 19-inch rim on that. Where, if you step to something a little bit older, like the Mustang I have out here, this one is just a passenger tire running on, now these are a little bit bigger than the stock ones, but stock, these were 205/60 16s, which is one of the most incredibly common tires. I can put tires on that thing for about $400. So tires for that, not as big of a deal as tires on a truck, where I'm going to be closer to $1,000 to $2,000 to put tires on it. It's one of those factors where, hey, like, this is a great deal. It's only a $2,000 truck, okay? But we need to immediately put at least close to $2,000 just in tires, plus suspension components that are worn, because we know they're worn because of the feathering and the cupping in the tires. We know that this needs immediate repairs, where this $2,000 truck is now more like a $5,000 truck, because items have added up, or, the trans fluid is dirty. That immediately needs service. It's still shifting fine, but it needs service. It needs this, it needs that. Now, some vehicles, brake specific, you can see how much brake pad life is left simply looking through the tire. And of course, we are still on a somewhat of a weird sunny day, and so the sun's sitting behind us, so we can't see anything. But some vehicles you can see the brakes through, which this Infiniti over here, we can see the brakes through the rims just fine with no problems. And we can see back here, and we can tell that, hey, this thing still got 5, 6, 30 seconds of brake pad left on it. Brakes are good on this. Where something like that Suburban, you can't really tell, and so without crawling around underneath of it, or having a hoist or a jack to pull a tire off, you're not going to know how much brake life is left on those pads. And so that's one of those potential immediate maintenance items that is required before you have a mostly reliable secondhand vehicle. Test everything that you absolutely can, especially with interior stuff. Very, very minor, simple stuff that you would think, oh, that's not an issue at all. Okay, well, why I never checked the passenger front door, but the door doesn't open from the outside. Okay, the back one does just fine. And what it actually is the door lock actuator is actually broken on this one. And so it will lock with the lock switch, but it will not unlock, because that internal electronic mechanism has gone bad. Like, oh, okay, well, that's not all that bad. No, it is, because now you've got to take it to a shop, pay them, $100 in labor, $130 in labor to replace it, plus $300 for that sensor. There's another $500 you weren't counting on. So testing absolutely everything you can and using that to help lower the price of the vehicle. Now, there's always going to be kind of a floor price that you're never going to get below. So $2,500 truck, it needs $2,000 in tires, needs a door lock actuator, needs suspension components. We've got like $4,000 in repair bill added up already. They're not going to pay you $2,000 to take their car. Okay, they're going to have a floor price, and so you kind of just have to add it up and then make the best educated decision that you can. And that's what I'm trying to do with these videos is give you that little bit of knowledge, that little bit of education that will allow you to make a better, more informed decision when you go to purchase either a higher mileage vehicle or a used car. Because there's a lot of stuff that adds up really, really quickly. Also, like checking stuff, make sure that every single window goes up and down with the switch, with the master window switch. And then go around and check each individual door, both that the manual lock works and actually locks, and check the individual windows to make sure that everything's working the way that it should. Because if you don't do that, same thing again. This passenger window does not operate from the passenger switch. It operates from the main one, but not from the passenger switch. Now you may be able to get by for that for a while, but that's another cost that you need to be aware of that is coming up. Power mirrors, make sure that they function. Flip the switch and rotate the mirrors around. Even like don't adjust them. Make sure that they'll adjust in, adjust out, adjust up, adjust below, and then put them back to about where they were. Make sure that everything works. Sunroofs especially. This one actually has a sunroof in it. When these go bad, you're anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000 to get that repaired. And if it's leaking, which is another thing, you know, it might be worth it just to take it through a $5 car wash to find out that anytime there's water on the top of this thing, it pours through the sunroof, which causes even more damage because now you got water sitting in the bottom of the vehicle, rotting out the floorboards, breaking the electronics, shorting stuff out. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that adds up very, very quickly on vehicles that you need to be aware of. Body damage. This can also help kind of get the price of the vehicle down because it's not as beautiful. This one's got a pretty significant dent in the lower left corner. And I in particular did not notice that big dent when I was looking at this. I was more concerned about the mechanical aspect of it. It has also got some, of course we can't see it. Let's see if we can get a better angle here. But there are some pretty egregious scratches, which a couple of these did come from having to rescue my brother up the side of the mountain in this thing. First month in business, had to get a couple of Rocky Mountain racing stripes on her, but you know, these fenders were already dented. 1, 2, which I'm sure I'll figure out what caused this because the dents are nearly mirrored on these front fenders, but that's another cost. Another big cost that you need to watch for is windshields, because most places you will get a ticket for a big cracked windshield, which I looked at a number of these Suburbans when I went to buy this one, and out of the 4 that I looked at, this is the only one that didn't have a spidered windshield. I priced the windshields out before I made the purchase. I test drove the vehicles, and then I told them, hey, look, I got to do some research, get some prices on some stuff, and I'll give you a call back. And I was about $250 to put a windshield in one of these Suburbans where, you know, I ended up with this one that doesn't need a windshield. I just saved that cost. Granted, this one did not have as good of tires as some of the other ones did, but this one was running a lot better than the others. So this was kind of the one that I had to settle on. I had to kind of, you know, compensate with some stuff where this one needs some repairs, but the repairs on this one are not as expensive as they would be on another Suburban. But it's all just things that add up. Making sure all your door locks work, you know, even the back hatch, making sure that the upper is working and that the air shocks are in place and that the glass hinges aren't busted off. I can't tell you how many times I've had individuals come into the dealership where I was working where, you know, hey, I just paid a premium for this. I just paid full blue book value at a used car lot. Drove it off the lot. Everything was great. Everything was fine. And then my daughter went to open up the back glass and the whole back glass just fell out because the hinges were broken. And it was one of those things we just never checked, and it shattered, and they're not going to do anything for us. They're not going to help us on payment, you know, getting this fixed. They don't care. They sold it as is. And now you're stuck with the bill. So this is part 2. Should be making another one here in the next couple of days. Anything you guys in particular want to see? Another thing, you know, check your headlights, make sure the horn works, make sure the wiper blades are good, make sure that the washers spray on the windshield. I can't tell you how many times, you know, an individual's bought a vehicle and brought it to me and like, yeah, everything's great, except, you know, I got stuck in this dust storm and then it was raining mud and I tried to wash the windshield and the wipers don't work, and filled up the washer fluid and the washers still aren't spraying. And you know, it's either got a burn up motor or it's got a break in one of the lines somewhere. And, you know, just another one of those costs that end up adding up. Where, you know, you might have been better off looking at, at buying another vehicle, at a completely different one. Or, in this case, this ended up being the best out of the bunch that I test drove that were in my price range to do what I needed to do. Now, I didn't need a 7 or 9 passenger Suburban. It's definitely nice to have, and I still did retain the seats for it, but it's what I needed, and it accomplishes exactly what I need it to accomplish, which is to get me my tools and all my expertise and all my testing equipment to wherever my customer is, to be able to get them back on the road as quickly as possible. And to be able to, hold, carry, and then, worst case scenario, if I've got to go retrieve parts or go pick up a bigger part, I have the storage area and I have the cargo space to do that. So you kind of just have to look at all your variables. Do you have kids? Do you never plan on having kids? Then don't even look at something like this. If you don't need the towing capacity, there's no reason to buy a big SUV if you're never going to go off-roading. You might look at 2-door sports cars, that are going to get better miles per gallon than this would. But they're going to be a lot funner, a lot more user friendly. You never need back doors. You never need to use the back seat because it's only ever you or your wife or your girlfriend, and that's it. That car does great. It gets anywhere from 20 miles a gallon in the city all the way up to, I think I've got all the way up to 32 on the freeway, driving it nice, mind you, not racing around and having a good time. But that's a lot more suitable, if I were still a mechanic, to get back and forth to work every day. That's my daily beater. That's my daily driver. And it's cheap, decent on fuel, and gets me to where I need to be, and that's all it needs to do. Whereas this one is a work rig and has to do a lot more. You just have to find what suits you best, and you might need, better fuel economy, but you've only got 1 or 2 kids. Something like a mid-sized or full-size sedan is going to work perfect for you. Do you need to spend $13,000, $15,000, $20,000 to get a good one? No, you don't. You just need to find one that's been somewhat taken care of. And again, biggest thing that's going to tell you the condition of the vehicle is the test drive. Is it vibrating? Is it shaking? Is it driving down the road straight? When you're driving down the road, are you having to pull the steering wheel to correct it because it keeps trying to change lanes on you? If you let go of the steering wheel, it'll immediately change lanes. That's not good. It requires repairs. So just kind of, add up everything. Make sure you take a notebook and write this stuff down, so as you go, you don't get, mixed up. And then when you go to look at the next one, you get done, say, hey, what, I'm considering it. There's a couple of issues. Don't give them a price. Don't give them an offer. If it's, especially if it's something that you don't think is going to go really fast and it has enough problems that you're considering buying something else, just say, hey, I've got some other stuff to look at. I'll get back to you. And then go look at another one, flip to the next page, write down what year, the color of it, whatever will help you remember which Suburban is which, and then write down the problems on the next one. And see, and then you can kind of add up and see, okay, even though, we're looking at 3 different Suburbans priced between $2,000 and $3,000, well, the $3,000 one needs $7,000 in repairs. The $2,500 one needs $2,000 in repairs, whereas the cheapest one, the $2,000 one, only needs, a couple $100 in repairs. They don't really know what they have, even though it has higher mileage than the rest. It's actually in a lot better condition than any of the other two, even though the one only had 160,000 miles on it, and the other one had 200,000, and this had the most at 300,000 miles. This was the better buy because it was better taken care of. It's had the transmission replaced. Now, I don't know how long ago, but the trans fluid is incredibly clean. I know that they've been servicing it since it's been replaced. The engine oil inside of it was clean. This is the better purchase. Even though it has over 100,000 more miles than the other 2 units, I know that this one has been better taken care of. And so this is the one that I ended up buying. But anyways, watch for another video. Again, any questions, any comments, please leave them below. Any car repairs, any advice, or anything you need, feel free to email me, text me, whatever you need to do. Have a great day, guys.